Robbie Lacey, the middle school pastor, and it is our mission in student and children's ministry to support families as we help unbelieving students become committed followers of Jesus Christ. Today, we are glad to have on Ryan and Miriam Conner. They are parents for two of the students in our ministry, and they're going to answer the question, how can we balance school, sports, and involvement with the church? Ryan and Miriam, thank you so much for joining me today on the Parkside Parent Podcast. We've been talking a lot about the purposes of God in the family life, and we thought it'd be helpful for you guys to talk a little bit about balancing and prioritizing all the different activities that the family inhabits in life. But before we go into that, I think it'd be helpful for us to get to know you a little. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you guys do, how many kids you have, and what ages.
Okay. Well, we're both teachers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been a teacher for a long time. I teach online high school. We have 3 kids. Callie's a senior, Kobe's an 8th grader, and Carly's in 4th grade.
Great. And how long have you guys been going to Parkside?
This is our 5th year going to Parkside.
Great. And what kind of things are you guys just involved in with your kids in terms of family life and whatever it may be?
Our kids are involved in a lot of different activities and sports. Callie's plays varsity tennis, and she's involved heavily in youth group here, which is great. She's involved in a lot of things at school. Our son, Kobe, plays club soccer. He runs cross country, plays basketball, he runs track. So he does a lot and he's involved in the youth group here. And Carly's in 4th grade, but she plays basketball and does dance and things like that. So they're all pretty busy.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys got a really full schedule in your life. So yeah, we know that balancing things in terms of sports and school activities and church is kind of chaotic sometimes, and no one balances it perfectly. But you guys have managed to balance all these things relatively well. And you know, my question to you and to everyone listening is just how do you guys go about balancing all these things in your guys' life as Christians and as parents and as people involved in your community?
I think first and foremost, just making sure from day one our kids know that their spiritual life is the most important, and that church is a priority, youth group's a priority, and as much as we can, we let them know that that's going to be the priority. Yeah. And so if there's a conflict, we're going to probably go the spiritual route. If there's something with church, if there's something with the youth group, they're going to go to that before they go to the sport. And we just think that's a priority. And we also try to manage things in a way where they're not too overloaded during one time. So they do a lot, but we try to keep it so it's, this time of the year they've got this going on, so it's not too much at one time, and so that they can go to things like youth group. Yeah. So I just think from day one, emphasizing that and making sure that's a priority to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it definitely can be hard, and there are definitely been conflicts, and I'm not going to say they've never missed, a youth group or a church or something like that for a sport ever, but I think that as long as we try to, for us, keep that, that's not the norm, and they know that, and, at some point, you just kind of have to make a choice of what's important, and it doesn't mean like, oh, we're a better parent, or our kids are better, but at some point, you do have to make a choice, and I know that, we'll ask ourselves, well, if they had a sport practice or something like that, they would go. A lot of times it's like, well, I'm tired, I have youth group or whatever. It's an easy thing to miss. But then I try to ask myself, well, if it were a game or a practice, they would still go. Mm-hmm. So, try not to get that kind of slippery slope and just ask ourselves. And, Danny said something years ago. He did a parent talk, and it really stuck with me. He said, what do you want? Where do you want your kid to be? What's important, when they're 40? Do you want them to be, this professional athlete? Do you want them to be this all-star, scholar? Do you want them to be whatever it is? And those things are great. Or do you want them really to be, intact spiritually, and on fire that way? And that really stuck with me because, that's what I would choose over all of those things, even though those are all fun and great and have their own importance. So, like I said, you just, at some point, you do have to make a choice for your family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really challenging for a lot of Christian families. And I think, you have to decide, again, what is the most important thing. And for us, and I've always said this as a father, if my kids don't love Christ with all their heart, soul, strength, and mind, and live for Him all of their days, then I failed as a father. That's the way I feel in terms of if I haven't made that the priority it should be. And so, to me, that's the driving force in our life.
Absolutely.
And that's the center. And then we kind of try to work around that and balance that all out.
Got
we
it.
don't do it perfectly by any means. We're constantly learning how to do that and manage that well. But again, what is the most important? Is it more important for your kid to be this recognized athlete or a singer, musician, or in the plays, whatever it is? Or is it to be a follower of Christ and to live their life in a way that honors Him? So there's no right or wrong. It's just trying to figure out for your family.
And you can do both. You can be involved.
Absolutely.
You know, we're not saying choose. Our kids are involved in a ton of things, as
Yes.
we already said. And like I said, I'm not going to say they never miss something on both ends, though.
Absolutely.
It's been on both ends.
Yeah.
So it's not just always, you know, you're going to miss a youth group. You know, sometimes it's like, well, you have to miss a practice. Or if there are 2 nights of practices and one falls on, we've done that before, too. Well, you go to one practice, you know, and the game, and then you'll go to, because youth group is on the other night. And that's fine. And none of our kids they've wanted to go. They've always wanted to go, so it's never been a fight.
Yeah. That is great. And you even do all these things as a coach, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. How do you work that out?
You talk about from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, from
or
a coach.
parenting, like...
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as a coach, again, I've always tried to make it a priority so that I am leading by example. And so, again, I try to work that around. So obviously I have to give certain time to coaching, but just trying to balance that again and making sure like I'll work around or I'll plan around when I'm in charge of practices and things like that, and try to plan. And when I've coached Kobe or coached my kids, plan around that and make sure they know that, you know, this is more important. And I think, again, just constantly coming back to what is most important and emphasizing that. And then when those choices are there, trying to make the choice whenever possible, that is always going to be to grow spiritually. And is always going to be to make sure that God comes first.
Yes.
And anything we're committed to for that is more important than our other commitments.
Yeah. Thank you. Miriam, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face as a parent, and how can we as youth pastors be praying for you in that?
Yeah, I think just like kind of what we've been talking about, just the busyness,
Yeah.
it can kind of creep in, and you just get so busy that some things, you know, kind of get, you know, pushed to the side, and it can be sometimes church and activities and faith, and I think just the busyness, you know, even as a mom, to make sure that I'm spending quality time with each of my kids and having those conversations about what's important and about God, and making sure that I'm leading by example. I think is hard. You know, sometimes just something that you could be praying about that I just continue to model. I think that's super important as a parent, to model the behavior and actions, not perfectionism, because they need to see that, you know, we're all sinners and we're real people, but just to model that behavior, because they do watch, no matter what age they are, you know, everything that you do and say.
Sure. Well, thank you guys for all your insights. This is, I'd imagine this would be helpful for any parent to listen to. Also, Miriam actually has a parenting podcast, and we'll link it in the show notes below. We hope this conversation will help you to prioritize church life and family life. So, Ryan and Miriam, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us.
Thanks for listening today. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, and please check out the show notes below for more resources regarding the topic we covered today. And be sure to tune in for our final episode this season, where Alistair Begg will be back on to answer the question, how can I pray for my kids?